is.
Okay, cool.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Against All Enemies. I'm your host, as always, Rick Wilson, joined by my good friend, Ken Harbaugh, who is a man who knows a lot about the things we're talking about today. Ken, I just want to jump right in here. You are back and forth to Ukraine a lot. You've done a lot to support the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people's efforts to defeat Russia in this illegal and unjust war. And I want to start out with a clip from the Oval Office today during Trump's press conference of Trump talking about how the war in Ukraine is going and what his thoughts are. Let's start out with that clip.
So that was very nice that it was sent to me. Okay.
Mr. President,
yes.
on that subject, have you talked to Vladimir Putin about the fact that yesterday a big U.S. factory was hit in a Russian airstrike in Ukraine? What's your reaction to
I
that?
told him I'm not happy about it, and I'm not happy about anything having to do with that war. I said I settled 7 wars, and actually, if you think about pre-wars, add 3 more, so it would be 10. I thought this would be in the middle of the pack in terms of difficulty. No, I'm not happy about anything about that war. Nothing. Not happy at all. We'll see what happens. I think over the next 2 weeks, we're going to find out which way it's going to go.
Ken, I mean, I assume that like me, since Alaska, you've been like, the fuck is this?
You know, the 2 weeks things gets me every time, right?
Every time.
The way it's a geographical oddity, right? I know there's some
Right.
good memes out there mocking the 2 weeks thing, but this guy is 2 weeks away from solving world hunger and cancer,
Right.
and 2 weeks never comes. Joking aside, this is just an absolute humiliation, not just for the president, but for the
Right.
country. And that hurts. Like, I take that
Sure.
personally as someone
Yeah.
who wore the uniform. I know you do, as someone who was
Yep.
deep inside the Pentagon. Like, this hurts us as a
Yeah.
country. And it's
No,
easy to laugh.
It's absolutely unforgivable
It really
watching
is.
this clownish sort of approach to this, right?
Yeah, it's gut wrenching. And on the subject of that American factory, look, that wasn't collateral damage. I bet my life on that. It's not like there
Oh,
are
God,
American
no.
factories all over Ukraine. The Russians know exactly where they are. And
Yep.
this is another way to humiliate our president and, by extension, the country. Alaska was an abject humiliation for Trump
Huge.
and the United States. And I know we're going to get to this, but the critics of that travesty are now being targeted, right? I'm sure
Yep.
that one of the reasons the Bolton raid happened when it did is because he was one of the most vocal about identifying
100%.
just how bad Alaska went for Trump.
I mean, look, we have fired the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency today, who had the temerity to do what the DIA is supposed to do. And folks, inside the Defense Intelligence universe, DIA has a weird couple of subspecialties, one of which is like this materials intelligence analytics, like knowing, like, oh, look, that building collapsed this way, that means this. There are some really weird goons there who could look at like shipping containers and go, that's really transporting X or Y. Like, and they said the Iranian strikes that Trump was so proud of did not permanently cripple the Iranian nuclear program. They told the truth about it, and which is also, by the way, the consensus of every other intelligence agency out there. And now the head of the DIA got fired. The Air Force Chief of Staff has been fired. They're rolling through anybody who will tell the truth about what's going on and firing them. Tulsi Gabbard killing half of the ODNI, not killing literally, but who knows? You never know where it'll end. Taking out half the ODNI staff this week because she's afraid that they're not ideologically reliable to Donald Trump. I mean, man, we're in like the late stage of the coup stuff at this point.
And look, we as Americans don't really have a visceral appreciation of where this ends because this is new territory. But
Never
if you
done
have
this
any
before.
appreciation of history, you know what happens when a leader constructs a bubble around him or herself that is fed with nothing but lies. I think one of the best scenes in cinematic history is the end of Downfall, the story about the end days in Berlin, right? And Adolf Hitler just has this completely unrealistic view of what is happening a few miles away on the outskirts of Berlin. I mean, that is what happens. I'm not saying Washington is going to be invaded, but when you have a president who rejects the truth, it hurts the whole country. And it hasn't hurt yet, but it's only because we've gotten lucky.
We have gotten lucky. I want to play one more clip that was in that press conference today. The embarrassment around Donald Trump in that Alaska trip, folks. This should put a real pin in just how badly Trump does not get how Putin screwed him in that trip. Let's play that autograph clip.
And I was just sent a picture from somebody that wants to be there very badly. He's been very respectful of me and of our country, but not so respectful of others. But I'm going to sign this for him, but I was sent one, and I thought you'd all like to see it. That's a man named Vladimir Putin, who I believe will be coming, depending on what happens. He may be coming, and he may not, depending on what happens. We have a lot of things happening over the next couple of weeks. But I thought it was a nice picture of him. Okay.
Yeah, wild.
Again, what do you even say about that? What do you even say about that?
Do you remember it was, I can't remember the context, but the former Prime Minister of Australia was talking about being in the same room as Trump and Putin, Turnbull, and describing Trump as like looking up to Putin like he was the captain of the football team. And you get that feeling that Trump looks at Putin and he's like, man, I wish I had what that guy had. I wish I had his girlfriends, right? I wish I had the kind of control he has over his country. And there's something in psychology about what happens. There you go. About what happens to folks in their senescent years. They revert to their childlike selves. And you just see in that video of Trump just fawning over this picture.
Weird, man.
Putin sent, and it's worse than high school. It's embarrassing. It's I don't even have the words for it, but I'm embarrassed as an American.
And it's the thing that's so striking to me is this idea of so many of his followers. He's a brilliant negotiator. He's a brilliant manipulator. He's the guy who can put anybody and make it. No, this guy's fanboying the shit out of a guy who, let's be very clear to everybody, and you've seen this up close. You've seen this in person. This is a guy who orders attacks on civilian targets every single day and night in Ukraine. Yeah. Putin is not really trying to hit Ukrainian hard targets. He goes after apartment blocks and nursing homes and schools and water plants and bridges and power plants. And these are civilian targets where Putin focuses his attacks.
And the thing that both Trump and Putin get wrong about Ukraine is the Ukrainian people themselves. Yeah. Maybe this is like the failings of the great power theory of diplomacy, that the strong men can carve up the world. I think it's probably more personal than that. It is two betas, really, thinking that they can decide the fate of some of the bravest people on the planet. I think one of the reasons Trump hates Zelensky so much is that Zelensky holds up a mirror to him. And Zelensky is the personification of leadership, wartime leadership, strength, everything that Donald Trump wants to be, Zelensky actually is. And it is a reminder to Trump of his failings. And the idea that America and Russia are going to decide the fate of the carved off parts of Ukraine, it's ludicrous if you just talk to the Ukrainian people. And I think we need to remind ourselves what that actually means. It's not just swapping territory, it's surrendering your own people. And I've talked to people from the occupied territories. If I describe to you now what they described to me, we'd be kicked off the air. It is horrific beyond description. And our president wants to make that the status quo. It's unforgivable.
These folks, these are not Russian territories. These are Ukrainian citizens, Ukrainian territories, and the level of genocide and destruction there is, as you point out, we literally cannot describe it, or Substack would take us off. It is so horrific what they have done, and how so systematic what they have done. And yeah, I think that's right. I think there is a fundamental misread of Ukraine and Ukrainians. These people have been through this ringer. They were ready. I remember I spoke to a Ukrainian contact who is an academic, a few days before the invasion. And I said, what are you going to do? And he's an academic. He's a teacher. He goes, I'm going to teach my kids how to make bombs.
Yeah. And
we'll probably all die when they roll the tanks into Kyiv, but I'm going to teach my kids to make bombs, and I'm going to lead whatever I can do. This guy's my age. He's in his early 60s. And it was just like so cold about it. I'm just like, dude. He goes, no, we didn't give up. We didn't get our freedom from the Soviet Union to die for these fuckers, for this little guy, this little man. And he said something to me at the time. He goes, so many young Russian men will die for one old Russian man's vanity. Yeah. And I actually put that line in an ad later about Putin, but it is true. They will. These people do not give up.
I embedded. Yeah, sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
No, go.
I embedded with a anti-drone gun crew on a rooftop on the outskirts of Kyiv, the last line of defense against those drones coming in from Russia to hit civilian targets. And the captain of that gun crew, his call sign was Judge, because during the day he was is a sitting judge on the Ukrainian Supreme Court. He's on the Supreme Court, and at night he captains a gun crew shooting down drones that are trying to kill his friends and family. And it makes you wonder if anyone on our Supreme Court would do that, right? On the first day of the war, Judge and his other buddies on the court grabbed Kalashnikovs and they ran to the front. I talked to a defender of Odessa during the first week who described going to the recruiting station on day one of the war and there being a line around the block of grandmothers with kitchen knives ready to fight. And this is Odessa. It is a Russian-speaking
resort city. Yeah.
But Russian-speaking or not, it is every bit as Ukrainian as every other part of Ukraine. And this argument that the East and the South have Russian speakers in them, they do not want to be part of Russia, and they will fight to the death to stop that.
Yeah, and the idea that they're going to give up the 20% of the country or more that's already been taken by the Russians, folks, it just ain't going to happen. And Donald Trump, we had some polling this week that we saw here in the States. Vladimir Putin has a 9% approval rating in this country, 80+% opposed. And it's like you could probably make a list of the people that support Vladimir Putin in this country within a 5-block radius of the White House. Most of them are right there. But I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing here domestically, because we talked at the beginning about firing the DIA folks, and we'll come back to Ukraine at the very end. Firing the DIA folks, firing the Air Force Chief of Staff, Hegseth purging everybody at the Pentagon who disagrees with him at all, which is utterly astounding to me that an intellectual lightweight like Pete Hegseth, once folks you get to the level of being a service chief, as Ken knows, once you've done your joint tours at the Pentagon and you're a service chief, a 4-star general, you're a serious person. You are somebody who has graduate degrees and vast experience in the realities of what it takes to run a $1 trillion a year enterprise with 3 million people in it. Pete Hegseth could not operate a Waffle House. Pete Hegseth could not run a gas station. And the idea he's knocking out expertise from the Pentagon as fast as he can, to my mind, is a really telling risk factor for the services as we go forward. We are unfortunately going to get a generation of ass kissers, Trump ass kissers in senior officer billets, aren't we?
Yeah, well, yes, and it's going to be worse than that, because it is going to change the culture of the military. For generations, we have managed to keep that separation. We have managed to maintain the military as a nonpartisan institution that did the best it could to tell the truth. And now we have someone in charge who, not only couldn't run a Waffle House if he was asked to, he ran multiple small veterans organizations into the ground because of mismanagement. He's not just incapable, he's malicious in his leadership style.
Right.
He tear Milley's portrait off the wall?
He did.
So you have someone here who was placed in charge of the Pentagon to wage a war on woke. And even using those terms. And it begs the question, what if we have a real war? Who's going to fight it? And that's my big fear, that we are eviscerating our actual defense fighting capability. And only by the grace of God and the courage of those still in uniform have we not had a disaster so far. The other thing that I have to say, Rick, is, and I hope people start picking up on this, when Pete Hegseth dodges accountability by cloaking himself in the bravery of others, every reporter in DC should call him out on it, should find that totally unacceptable. When he's called out for Signalgate and leaking classified information, and his response is, "How dare you question the bravery of our pilots who flew over Yemen?" That is not your bravery.
No, that was not.
Infuriates me.
Yeah, that associative principle of bravery, and Pete Hegseth was again a guy, folks, who could not run a Waffle House. He was an incompetent at everything he's ever done. But there is another political drama playing out in DC today. Our old buddy John Bolton, who was Trump's national security advisor in the first administration, is now a guy who speaks up about Trump, tells the truth about him, wrote a book that was the truth about him. They tried to get him when he wrote the book, saying he'd leaked classified information. He did not. The review process, which I've ghostwritten stuff for people whose books had to go through the review process and were scrubbed after that. But in this case, he didn't leak classified material, but now they're accusing him of holding classified documents. Like what? Do they think he has a ballroom or a golden bathroom to store all those docs in his house in Bethesda? It's not that big. I'm just curious what you think about the political nature of this raid on John Bolton this morning.
Well, the fact that Rick Wilson and Ken Harbaugh are defending John Bolton should tell you something about principle. Look, I have so many disagreements with the man. I am sure we probably wouldn't be personal friends, but this is when you draw the line. This is when you stand up, even for people you may have personal disagreements with. It is abundantly clear that this raid was not about protecting classified information. It was about intimidation. And so it's really about the next person who dares to speak out against the Trump regime. That's who this is signaling to. John Bolton will be able to pay for the lawyers. He's not going to jail. He won't even be indicted. I'd bet you quite a bit on that. It's not about that. It is about sending a signal that if you speak out against the president, because look at what John Bolton has been doing over the last couple of days and weeks since Alaska. He has been telling the truth about the damage to American prestige, and this is his reward.
Yeah, I mean, and I did a live this morning, and I was talking about John a little bit. I've known John a long time, and again, disagree with John on a lot of stuff, a ton of things. But he and I have he comes on the podcast. We have respectful discussions about where he is today because he got it. He like a lot of people in the first administration, tricked himself into saying, okay, I can steer this ship in the right direction. You cannot steer that ship. He's learned that. And again, you can disagree with him, but the guy was a national security professional for a long time. And folks, underneath the layer of policy and action, there's also the layer of, like, when you're in the classified world, you know how to handle your documents. You administer them properly. You keep your crypto safe. You keep your not crypto, Bitcoin, folks. You keep your documents, appropriately managed and handled. You don't bring classified home in your briefcase. Because, Ken, if you and I had walked home with the shit that Donald Trump had in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago and in the bathroom, we'd be in prison right now. If we'd walked out of an assignment with TSSCI material, we'd be in prison right now. But, so I think you're right. I don't think they're even going to end up indicting the guy. This is a first act here. They're gonna try to do this to Clapper and to Milley and to Comey and to Hayden and other people who've been public about him from that world. And you've got Tulsi Gabbard will play whatever role he has that about taking away their clearances, taking away their security. And folks, again, disagree or agree with John Bolton. It wasn't John Bolton who got the coverage for himself for security. It was the fact that the Secret Service, the United States government, determined the Iranians had presented a credible threat because he helped whack Soleimani, and they were going to try to kill him, and they might. But this intimidation, I don't think. Do you agree with me? This is not the end. This was I think they picked Bolton because he's an unpleasant guy to a lot of people. He's a dick. A lot of people dislike John, so they thought, low hanging fruit.
Well, this is part of that pattern, right? They go for that low hanging fruit, that target of opportunity. They're doing it in this case with John Bolton with the immigration stuff. They're starting with LA, right?
Yep.
They're starting with an area or an individual with the maximum potential for sympathy on their side and provocation on the other side. And the thing I don't think we give Donald Trump enough credit for, and I imagine you've talked to Tim Snyder and Ruth Ben-Ghiat about the authoritarian impulse and how it is as much instinctive as it is strategic. I don't think Donald Trump has a strategic brain, but he's got this animal instinct, this lizard brain ability to press just the right buttons to advance the authoritarian agenda and provoke the other side. And it is incumbent upon us to, maintain our discipline, to know what's a distraction and what's not, and to not throw the first rock. I mean that literally. And I try to say that everywhere I go now, because they are waiting for that. I know we're talking about a raid on one person's house, but this is being played out over neighborhoods across the country, and we know what's going to happen. Donald Trump wants blood in the streets, and he wants somebody.
Do not be the idiot, folks. Do not be the idiot, no matter how bad the provocation is, who fires the first shot at the ICE agents. Do not do it. Do not do it. That is, they will level city blocks if you do that, if you give them that chance. You can never underestimate their willingness to watch blood flow.
And if you understand his deployments, even his raid of Bolton's house in that context, I think you appreciate what's actually coming. And they are going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, hoping that someone pushes back or shoots back.
The bayonet goes in until it's stopped by bone, and people will never they never believe the authoritarianism is coming until the authoritarian shows up and kicks the door down. And they are sort of like using DC as that test case. Let's play that Stephen Miller clip that we've got of him vamping in DC.
They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today, because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address one other thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
That is a motherfucker who has never either thrown or taken a punch in his life.
His days have to be numbered, right? As a DC insider, how much longer
listen
put up with that?
He is actually enjoying the fact that Stephen Miller feeds a part of Trump's base. There's about, depending on how you parse the numbers, about 8 to 12% of Trump's base that are purely racially motivated. That's the race is their only thing. And so they want to see troops in black cities. Yeah. It's not even the majority of the MAGA base. It's a lot of them, but it's a measurable number. But Miller plays a really interesting and important role in keeping those people really, really happy. He churns that immigration race button all the time. And Trump kind of likes that Miller is so bloodthirsty while simultaneously being such a beta. I mean, he's the classic, like, soft boy inside, snake staff officer type. And so Trump kind of digs that. But I mean, I think that one thing you're seeing is a little realignment in the power structure, though. Vance is trying to get out there ahead of a lot of this DC stuff too, and be out there very publicly about it, because he wants to. Vance is planning to be president, whether it's Trump's ankles or whether it's an election in 28. Vance is planning to be president, so he's really starting to like build his own power bases inside the White House. But hey, Ken, let me go back to Ukraine for a second before we wrap up. Tell folks, you've been, again, as I mentioned, you've been very active in supporting the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian efforts against Russia. Talk to us about the work that you do over there and how folks can get involved and how they can support that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, stay tuned to my Substack page. We're going to be reporting from there. I hope I can route some of those through you and your show as well.
Absolutely.
Rick,
when you guys are on the ground on this trip, I really want to make sure we do some lives when you're over there on this next round.
Let's do it. And look, I keep going back because of the people. It's humbling being around a nation. Well, it's a nation of heroes. Like, every street corner has another story that would be turned into a Hollywood blockbuster here if we could just tell them. One of the stories I just stumbled into was of these 3 teenage girls in the southern city of Kherson, which was occupied for 9 months by the Russians. And they provided some of the key intelligence on Russian troop movements that enabled the liberation of their city.
Oh my God. I can pitch that story now.
And you talk to the folks who trained them, you talk to the folks who acted on their intelligence, and they're just so incredibly humble. We talked to I think he was a farmer who, at first I thought I had the wrong guy. He said, "Oh, I wasn't part of the resistance." And I'm like, "Wait, this, something's not aligning here." I'm like, "Well, what did you do during the occupation?" And he said, "I just carried mines across open fields and laid them in front of the Russian tanks where they were going to get there." I'm like, "Okay, you're part of the resistance." I talked to another soldier whose job was to cross the river onto the occupied left bank and do raids and harass the Russian enemy forces, and then sometimes have to swim back. And he was all scarred up from a recent op. And I said, "How did you get wounded?" And he said, I wasn't wounded. It was just a little shrapnel," right? The kind of thing that would get you a handful of Purple Hearts in this country, they just brush off. I mean, their resilience and heroism it's hard to describe, but I'm excited to share it with your audience, and we'll be doing more trips coming up.
I love that. And folks, check Ken out on both the Valor Media Network, podcast network, and also on his Substack. And the story of the Wolverines with those girls, man, that's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That is, but it's very emblematic of the Ukrainians. It's very emblematic of the way they go. Ken, thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate you, man. And we'll loop back around. We'll talk to you in the next few days.
Awesome. Honor to be here. Let's talk soon.
Thanks so much. See ya.